This video is working on one-step inequalities where you're adding and subtracting. And the one good thing about adding and subtracting with inequalities, it's the exact same as when we were doing it with equations. Remember before we had our addition property of equality and our subtraction property of equality, that basically what it said was what you do to one side you do to the other. Well, same thing holds true here. If you add a number to one side, you have to add the same number to the other side. If you add or subtract one number from one side, you have to subtract the same thing from the other side. Alright, so you can kind of look at this example here and what they did with that, and you can work through that homework help problem on your own. But on this one, we'll do this one together. You want to always think, okay, what am I trying to solve for? I'm trying to solve for m. So I need to get that m by itself. To do that, I'll have to get rid of 1.2. Since it's a positive 1.2, you'll have to do a negative or subtract 1.2. What you do to one side, and you can still do your railroad tracks if you want, you do to the other. After that, these cancel, so you're left with m. This stays the same as less than or equal to, and if you need to, use a calculator. 5.5 minus 1.2, which is 4.3. So m is less than or equal to 4.3. And so that means any number that is less than or the same as 4.3 would work. So 4.3 you could plug in 1, you could plug in negative numbers, you could plug in 0. Any of those numbers less than this would still make this statement true. That's what an inequality is when it's asking you to solve. It's trying to find all of the numbers that would work for that variable. Now 21, I'm going to rewrite this so we have a little bit more room to work, and I'm actually going to take up space over here. With this one, we do the exact same thing. We look for our variable, what we're trying to solve for. I want to get that by itself, so I have to get rid of that minus 16. To do that, I do the opposite. So we add 16, or if it's a negative, you do a positive. If you're subtracting, you're adding. Either way you want to think about it. And again, what you do to one side, you do to the other. So negative 21 plus 16. Again, if you want to use your calculator, go ahead and use it. Negative 21 plus 16. And that would give me a negative 5. So negative 5 is less than a. Now, the workbook doesn't quite tell you to do this, but for me, I want you to always do this because it's easier to graph this way. You need to rearrange it, and when you rearrange it, you need everything to turn around. So the a goes first. The inequality has to flip. It was less than, so it's going to become greater than, and then the negative 5. So it's almost like you're reading it right to left instead of left to right. A is greater than negative 5. From here, once you have your answer, you will graph it. And remember in class I told you the easiest way is to look, okay, my graph has to have negative 5, so I'm going to put that right in the center. And then put 2 to the right, 2 to the left, and number them. And remember, because it's negatives, this is actually going to be our smaller numbers with 3 and 4 instead of 3 and 4 on this side, negative 6 and negative 7. Once you have your number line, you can graph. And remember, when we have greater than or less than, that's our open circle. If it's an or equal to, that's when it's a closed circle because it includes that number. So since this is just a greater than, it's open circle on negative 5, and we want all of the numbers greater than negative 5, so it's going to go that direction. Okay? And the last one I want to look at is a story problem, because you do have a few story problems on your homework, and these are usually the most difficult ones for students. So it says, there were a total of 125 cars at the car dealership. A salesperson sold 68 of the cars in 1 month. Write and solve an inequality that describes how many more cars, at most, the salesman has left to sell. interpret the solution. Now, whenever you read a story problem, you always have to look first, what are they asking you to find? Here it says, how many more cars? That's what we want to find, how many more cars. So I'm going to use the variable C. How many more cars? Then you also have to look at, what do you know? We found what we want to know, but what did they actually tell you? And they told us there was a total of 125 cars, and that it also tells us that the salesperson already sold 68 cars. So we know what our two numbers are going to be. We know what our variable is going to be. We just need to figure out our symbols that go with it and what order everything goes in. It's always easiest if you think about which one is kind of like your overall amount. And this is our total. So our total is 125. So I'm going to put that on the side by itself. And can they sell exactly 125? Well, they can, because that's how many they have. So it's going to be an or equal to. Now, do they want to sell more than that or less than that? Well, you can't sell the cars that you don't have. So it has to be less than 125. And then from there, you fill in the rest. He already has sold 68, plus the amount of cars he has left to sell has to be less than or equal to the 125 they have at their car dealership. Once you have it written, they wanted you to actually solve it. And to solve, we do it just like we did on all of the others. You get rid of the constant that's on the same side of the variable. So I have C is less than or equal to, and again, you can use the calculator if you need it. Here it's going to be 125 minus 68, and you would get 57. So here we have C is less than or equal to 57, and the interpretation just wants to know, what does that actually mean? So that means there are 57 cars left to sell. So the key to working on story problems is always to figure out what you're trying to find and what you know first, and then to work from there.